Okay. All right. So a really very warm welcome to everybody who is joining us today, whether it's for your first time or whether you've been with us before. It is great to have you here on this lovely Monday lunchtime. Hi to everyone. Do say hello in the chat box. It's lovely to know who you are, where you are, and what's going on for you. Lorraine, you've just said no, so hopefully that means you can hear us. I'm not too sure if the no is something to do with whether you can hear.
Rain.
So do have a look at your audio because it seems like everyone else is doing okay with the hearing of us. So just to introduce myself, I'm Ruth Taylor. I'm a nutritionist with Boots Online Doctor, and also a registered nurse and health and wellness coach. Been working in the sort of lifestyle medicine arena for around 15 years, and before that was very much orientated around nursing, and still have my nurse registration. We very much love bringing you these webinars. We meet you most Mondays at 1, very much in terms of just helping you in terms of supporting your weight loss journeys, cutting through all of the confusing messages that there are in the wider world around how to lose weight, and really just to simplify that message down as much as we possibly can and bring you some evidence-based information around what you need to be thinking about and why those things are important. So every subject that we bring is orientated to helping you on that journey and to really get you thinking about you. I think one of the things that can happen when we're on this weight loss journey is that we start competing with what we see other people doing, and that can be really unhelpful. So we want to get rid of all of that competition. We 100% are here to support you. And we're very luckily joined today by my colleague Alison, who is going to say hello to you all.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Alison Taylor Lamb. I've been working for Boots Online Doctor for 3.5 years now, and I do work. Well, I'm quite significantly part of our weight loss service. I generate a lot of prescriptions. So some of you may have seen my name on your order if you've ordered treatment with us. So really, most of my weight loss experience has with adults at least, has been with Boots Online Doctor, but I have worked significantly with childhood obesity as a previous role. So yeah, so children and now adults. So very pleased to be here. Thank you, Ruth.
Great. It's really good to have you here. So thank you so much for joining us. And we're also joined by Adna, who's part of our team at Boots Online Doctor, and she's here to support us with any technical queries that we might come across and also to share any links. Just to remind you, if you've brought questions with you, you can pop them straight into the chat box. They can go into the Q&A box. If you can find that, that's the best place for them. If for any reason you're struggling to find the Q&A box, then please pop them into the chat box and we'll try and filter through those, although they can be get a little bit lost in all of the chat. So, we'll do our best and Adna will help us with that as much as possible. So do please let us know if anything comes up for you today as we're talking. And we are joined by people all in the UK, and we've also been joined by Lydia, who's in Singapore. So I wonder what you're doing over there, Lydia. Is that somewhere you live or are you there for holiday? And thank you so much for tuning in. So today we are going to be talking all about cravings, and we're going to start in a minute with a poll. We'll get started on this webinar. Just to let you know, the polls are completely anonymous, and it really is about us understanding what's going on for you, and also an opportunity for you to really think about what is going on for you as well. I think sometimes we just live in our bodies, things happen in our days and in our weeks, and we don't always give it very much conscious thought because we're busy and we've got a lot going on in our lives. So this is an opportunity for you to just give yourselves a few moments to think what's going on for you in terms of cravings. Are you experiencing cravings? I used to get quite a few cravings. I used to crave chocolate when I was a nurse working on wards all the time, Alison. But I think that's because you're surrounded by chocolate. I wonder if it's that subliminal messaging of the foods that you've got hanging around, sort of talking to you. I know chocolate definitely used to talk to me. And yeah, I have to say I had some pretty unhealthy habits in terms of that chocolate when I was nursing on the wards. But Yeah, what about everyone here? Let's see what's going on. I can see of the 70 people who've answered the poll so far, around 76% of you are experiencing regular cravings. So that's about 55 people. And some of you experiencing them less frequently. Chocolate, way up there. I'm not surprised to see that. It's the number one food that the people who are answering this poll are craving. Some people are having late night cravings. Other people are craving because they're bored or stressed or having some emotional hiatus. Um, and for a lot of people, they're sort of one of the things that's getting in your way of achieving your weight loss goals. So we knew that. That's why we thought this was such an important webinar to be talking through and just thinking about what cravings are. So thank you so much for sharing your experiences with us, and I'll share the results just so you can see what everybody else is experiencing too. And let's talk a little bit about cravings. So, what is a craving? So, a craving is a really strong desire to eat a specific food. It's got nothing generally to do with hunger. It's all to do with just those emotional responses to situations in our life, or it could be because we've got some blood sugar dysregulation going on. So, we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail in a minute. Typically, when you have a craving, it's for high energy food. So it can be for sweet treats, like lots of people have said, such as chocolate, or less healthy snacks like desserts and crisps. And we know that cravings come along for all sorts of reasons. It can be that we have created a habit. So it could be that we have a habit of reaching for those foods when we're feeling a little bit stressed or a little bit bored, or something has triggered an emotional response. It could be that we have something going on in our lives and it's really hard to navigate around those really challenging times for all of us. It often is related to stress, and we know that. But we also know that that habitual eating is really something that we need to take stock of and to really start thinking about and seeing if that is one of the things that is tripping us up. Is it that when you're really, really stressed, you need to be thinking about what you can reach for? Or is it you need to pay more attention to what you're eating in those moments? What cupboard foods have you got? What are you buying regularly? What are other people buying regularly that are in your cupboards that are sort of getting in your way? This is really important because I can see for a lot of people here today, these are factors that are really getting in their way of their weight loss success. And you're here because you want to lose weight and you want that support and you want that success. So it's time to really start thinking about it. I really think this is such an important point. As someone who has been on that weight loss journey for years, I really understand this as well. So, people who are more likely to experience cravings are those we know that stress is a real factor, and we'll go into that in a huge amount of detail, a little bit more detail in a minute. And we know that part of the problem is food availability because we know that our cupboards can have the wrong foods in. We know that when we go out, we're very likely to bump into all sorts of goodies that are going to talk to us and make us want to reach out and buy them and eat them. So we have to become really mindful of all of those things. So, yes, let's talk a little bit about stress. So, one of the main hormones that regulates our appetite is cortisol. And when it's working well, we can really control our appetite quite well, and we can control the amount of cortisol that we produce. And the other hormone that we need to be thinking about is leptin. Leptin is our hunger hormone. It is really caught up with how we balance our hunger. And if we have leptin resistance, we can end up with a loss of control of how much we eat. We can sort of almost lose our awareness that we are actually full. So, leptin is one of those hormones that will stop telling us to eat when we are full. But we can also, a little bit like insulin resistance, we can get leptin resistance. So, we're going to go into that in a little bit more detail now. So we know that leptin resistance can happen if we're having a lot of stress, if we're not sleeping well, or if we're regularly eating high sugar, high carbohydrate, high glycemic foods. And what happens when we become leptin resistant is we stop responding to that signal that we're full. So this is a really key factor for many people who are trying hard to lose weight, who perhaps have had less than brilliant habits. I don't think you need to be perfect, and there is no judgment coming from here at all. It's just to raise your awareness, really, because as if this is a cycle that you're in, then it can be really challenging to override this. So we know that when you're leptin resistant, you won't switch off, your eating mechanism won't switch off, and you're very likely to overeat in that situation. Leptin is made by our fat cells in our body, and when it's released, it triggers that sense of fullness. And that is a great response to have because it can really help you be in control of your eating, and that is what we want. If we become resistant to that trigger, it can have lots of negative effects on our body. We'll stop being able to respond to insulin so well. So we know that a high amount of insulin can lead us to other health conditions like type 2 diabetes. And we really think this is a key element to managing your food intake. Really important. We'll talk about how to control leptin in a little while, but start thinking about this. Start thinking about how often you're having cravings. Start thinking about whether you feel full when you've eaten. I think fullness can really be improved by how we eat as well. And we have a whole webinar around how to eat because we know that's a really important element. We also know that we need to be thinking about stress because when we're stressed, this will release our hormone called cortisol. And high levels of cortisol will also lead to our inability to manage our hunger signals so well. So it will disrupt the effect of leptin. So this is really important. When we have poor leptin, when we have high cortisol, we are much more likely to have all of the cravings that we started the webinar by asking you about. So this might be quite relevant to some of you. What do you think, Alison? It's quite an important point, isn't it? I think it's a new, not often spoken about in weight loss journeys. I think, if you've been to different weight loss groups, it's not something that we often hear mentioned, I don't think.
No, you mean specifically about the hormones and stress.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's just
Yeah,
such an
yeah,
important point.
yeah. And actually, when you were talking through that slide, Ruth, I was thinking about when we're trotting around the supermarket and what actually makes us pick up these snacks and these treats. Um, because of a lot of managing this or managing cravings is to prevent access to these products, isn't it? And we all know we shouldn't go to the supermarket. We shouldn't do grocery shopping when we're hungry, should we? And I think most of us know that. But it's understanding actually that when you are shopping and choosing these unhealthy snacks, having that willpower to say no and not add them to your shopping trolley. Yeah,
Hard, isn't it? No, it's a really good point. And actually, Ben has just put a
yeah.
comment in the chat box about delivery and Uber Eats really sort of playing into this whole food availability and being able to order the foods that you probably don't really want to be focusing on too often. They're your treat foods that you want to be keeping perhaps to a bit more of a minimum, really. So I wanted to talk a little bit as well, because this is really relevant about thinking about blood sugar regulation. And we do talk about this in the food orientated webinars as well. But it's really important to just tune in and think about what we're eating and the impact that it's having on our blood sugar, because actually this is an absolute key to managing weight and managing your energy, managing your cravings, managing your sort of capacity to think straight, managing your ability to be in control. So for me, this is crucial. So when you eat, as you can see on the chart, we've got a red chart that shows how our blood sugar can become quite dysregulated. So if you look at that red side of the chart, this is sort of the type of effect we would expect to see if you're someone who is eating a lot of sort of starchy carbohydrates, a lot of high sugar foods, perhaps starting the day with a coffee and some cereal. You'll find that your blood sugars will come up quite quickly, but unfortunately, what will happen is they will begin to drop very quickly too. And as you can see on this red side of the chart, when you drop, you're going to be feeling pretty rubbish. Your energy is going to fall to pieces. Your mood can really plummet, and you can then start craving all sorts of foods and sugar and coffee, or coffee with sugar in, and biscuits to really give you that boost. And it can become a habitual pattern. So we know that this will happen a lot for many, many people. It could be that you are eating just a lot of those processed foods, so they tend to have less fiber in, they tend to have hidden sugars, or even the foods which have no sugar but they have sugar alternatives. They can be a problem for you as well, and they can keep you firmly over on this red side of the chart. So, our pancreas is an organ that produces insulin in response to the amount of sugar that we have in our diet. And its role is very much in terms of normalizing blood sugar. So if you look at the green chart, this is how we want our blood sugars to bounce along. We know that it's going to be a little bit of variety, but we want it to be sort of kept within a calmer level of going up and down. So if we're eating those high sugar, high processed foods all of the time, we're going to be creating a lot of insulin, and our blood sugar will have a compensatory dip because we can often overshoot how much insulin we need to produce. Our blood sugars can fall quite dramatically, and we can end up having all of those cravings that I was talking about just now. So to achieve nice even blood sugar, we need to be thinking about eating lower glycemic foods. If anybody doesn't understand that term, please ask. There is no such thing as a silly question. We want you going away really understanding what we're talking about here. So the low glycemic foods are the foods which are naturally lower in sugar. So they're natural foods, lower in sugar. They have higher fiber. Protein will fall into that category as well. Generally, protein-rich foods will help our blood sugars to be a little bit more balanced. Fats, healthy fats, can also help in terms of keeping our blood sugars balanced. These are the foods we want to be thinking about. We want to be thinking about low carbohydrate, low sugar, and really eating in a way where our energy is sustained. We also want to be thinking about the timing of our food. So for many people, there's a lot of confusion about how often you should eat, whether you should avoid eating at certain times. We have a whole webinar on that, so we won't go into this in huge detail, but if you have any questions that are relevant to you that you want to go away understanding more about, we'll either direct you to those webinars or give you some quick answers depending on how many questions we have. One of the things that we really recommend that you look at in this whole process of losing weight or stabilizing your weight is our core eating plan. That's very much been created around a low glycemic way of eating. We've combined it with adding in the healthy fats that we would expect to see on a Mediterranean style of eating, because we know that combining those two approaches is probably our most healthy way of eating. And Adna, I think you're going to share a link. Thank you so much. That's brilliant. Thanks for sharing the link. So download the link, take a look at that. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to let us know, and we're going to move on, but do let us know if you have any questions. Alison, no.
And yeah, just to ask Ruth, that core eating meal plan is for anybody, whether they're taking weight loss medications or not, isn't it?
It's completely for anyone on a weight loss medication. We are in the process of just getting a GLP-1 meal plan checked, but it is basically more or less the core meal plan. So you can use that as your starting point, and once all of the technical side of the meal plan for the GLP-1 meal plan has been checked, we'll be releasing that, but it's not quite ready, unfortunately, to release yet. Yeah, but this is suitable for anyone. Suitable for weight
Yeah,
loss,
yeah.
suitable for weight loss maintenance, suitable for just general good health. And that's what we want. We don't want any sort of random crash dieting going on here. We want you to learn the way of eating that is going to be sustainable over the long run.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, thank you, Ruth. So moving on to emotional cravings then. Um, And it's understanding that craving for a specific food is very different to hunger. We've all experienced hunger, where eating anything will suffice. Um, what makes food cravings different, however, is it's how specific the need for those cravings are and what sort of food will only do in those situations. So we don't just want to eat anything when we have a craving. It has to be something specific, or our brains are telling us it has to be something specific, that we need it, that we want it. And that's possibly when we start reaching out for our crisps, our cookies, the ice cream, whatever it might be. And many of us do experience food cravings from time to time. No matter who you are, whether you're trying to lose weight or not, whether you are healthy weight or otherwise, everyone or most of us can experience food cravings. And those of us that don't, actually, they're probably more able to manage those cravings, maybe a little bit better than some of us. Um, and for certain individuals, cravings can absolutely pose a serious health risk. For example, we know that food cravings can lead on to food eating disorders, such as binge eating. And of course, that in turn then can lead on to obesity. Um, and in addition, giving into food cravings can trigger feelings of guilt and shame. And again, guilt and shame. I don't know about anyone else here and you, Ruth and Adna, but if I eat more than two biscuits, well, two biscuits is bad enough. But then if I go on to eat four or five because I'm in a moment of craving, it just makes me feel grotty. So then come those feelings of guilt and shame. So we want to try and stop that if we can, because we don't want to feel grotty. We don't want to feel unhealthy, and we certainly don't want to be at the mercy of food. So a bit more on that. Serotonin and dopamine respond to junk food in the same way that they respond to street drugs such as cocaine or heroin. It's all about that very quick, good feeling that we get, that buzz that we get from either taking those drugs or eating those treats. And the release of these feel-good chemicals trigger the brain's reward pathway, and overrides feelings of fullness. So a bit like my example, two biscuits won't do. I want three, I want four, I want five. So it's causing people to want more, to eat more, but eat the wrong types of foods, even when we're not hungry. In addition to that, research demonstrates that those who are addicted to food may develop a form of tolerance. So some of you may have noticed that for yourselves, and you just find that you can eat more, a little bit more, a little bit more over time. That instinct to um, binge eat, if you like, um, might mean that you start to increase that intake over time. And consequently, you become less satisfied with food. Um, so the food industry, we know that everything that's laid out in our supermarkets, it's done so in a very precise way. And we always see these programs around Christmas time, the way the supermarkets are arranged to attract us to certain products, certainly at certain times of the year. Um, and the food industry wants us to spend money. And in fact, that they're very bad going back to children, actually, aren't they? Of making sure that that sweet aisle looks attractive and that it's in a suitable location within the store. Um, so the food industry wants us to spend money. Um, it's a shame to think that there's no interest in health at all, that it's just all about us purchasing, making money. And a lot of research, as we know, goes into selling products that are easy for manufacturers to make lots of money for, or make lots of money on. And the majority of those foods are bad foods, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think with
Yeah.
that, there's that thing, isn't there, Alison, called a bliss point. So it's really weird how it's amazing, really clever manufacturing, but a lot of the processed foods have been created in such a way as it just when we eat them, we have no sense of appetite control. They're actually created with an element of the right amount of fat, the right amount of salt, and the right amount of sugar that we can carry on eating them, and it will not affect our appetite. It will not lead us to feeling full. And it is a very, very clever manufacturing principle around a lot of the manufactured sort of treat goods, whereby, yeah, exactly as you're saying with that packet of biscuits, you can't stop at two. You always can manage to eat several more. They're sort of created with that crunch and that sort of like satiety factor where they actually just drive on the eating and it's done for their profit margin, obviously less about a health impact. And I find that really upsetting. The more I look into that, the more I really understand that this is food trickery. And yeah, there's a really good book. Have you read this book? The Ultra Processed People book by Chris Van Tilliken. That is a real eye opener. If you're interested in this subject, it's definitely one to grab and read or listen to. I find it fascinating and it's quite upsetting when you get into that aspect of it.
Yeah, that is supposed to be a good book, isn't it? I know some
Yeah,
of our colleagues at work have read it. I
that's
was going to say something else then, but it's gone. It
sorry.
might come back to me. Yeah.
No, it's all good. I just think it's just concerning, isn't it? And I think with that sugar as well, it's almost like we know that sugar is a little bit like a street drug in as much as exactly what you're saying, that the more you have, the more you need. So your sort of mood will require more and more sugar to get that lift. So your dopamine will need more sugar. Once you get to that sort of point of a level by which your dopamine will then need even more sugar to get that mood bounce as a result of eating it. So I think it's sort of like we need to somehow move away from those sugar-rich foods as much as we can because they just don't help with any of this, do they? Our mood is so adversely affected as well.
They do. And actually, sorry to interrupt again, Ruth, but I just looking at the chat there, someone mentioned, oh, forgive me, I can't find it now, but not even going down the sweets and treats aisle. It was Coralie. Yeah, if possible, try and avoid those sections. I know I keep coming back to the supermarket. I don't, I really don't know why that is, but actually, I know that works with me and my bottles of Prosecco. If I don't go down the alcohol aisle, I'm less likely to be enticed to pick one up. So, um, yeah, it can work for some people anyway.
It's a really important point. Or, for many people, it's shopping or stopping and buying petrol. And funny enough, guess what you have to walk past if you go into the petrol station? You have to walk past all of the super sweet, tasty snacks which catch you in the moment when you're feeling quite tired and you need a pick me up. It can be really challenging. So we said we talk a little bit about how to boost leptin sensitivity. So what we know is eating a balanced diet is really key to this whole leptin sensitivity. So eating from a guideline such as the core meal plan can really help in terms of creating that balanced diet. Also thinking about how we manage our movement. So we know that regular exercise can also help in terms of insulin sensitivity and leptin sensitivity. So it's really important. Back to the diet, we want to be thinking about that protein. So we want protein to be in there around that 0.8 of a gram per kilogram of your current body weight over a 24-hour period. You can take this a little bit higher depending on your life stage. So it might be around 1 gram per kilogram of body weight. For many people will be a really good amount. And there are certain stages of life where you may even want that, or if you're doing a lot of exercise or bodybuilding, then we would recommend talking to your personal trainer if you have one, or somebody at the gym if you're going to a gym, and just checking in with them as to what they would recommend in relation to your exercise program. If you're somebody who's just doing the average walking around in life, that zero point 0.8 to 1 gram per kilogram of body weight should be adequate for you, unless you have any health related issues where you've been put on a protein restriction or you have additional needs. But you should hopefully be following some really helpful advice in that relation. Healthy fats are really important, so do tune in to our podcast on how to eat, or also the How to Eat webinar. We can share links to previous webinars. Adna, if you're able to share the link for those previous webinars, that would be useful. Interestingly enough, sleep is really important. We have a whole webinar coming up in the next few weeks all around sleep, because we know for many people, sleep is quite an issue in terms of quality of sleep or the amount of sleep that you're managing to achieve. And really, the research is telling us for leptin sensitivity, we want to be aiming for 7 to 9 hours of quality sleep every night on average across the week. And that's my biggest downfall, I have to say, at the moment, is a total lack of sleep. And to avoid those processed sugars, we've talked about that quite a lot. The other side of this is managing stress. We know that when your cortisol levels are high because of stress, then it is about then that can disrupt your insulin signaling and can disrupt the amount of leptin and the leptin signaling, and also can trigger more and more cravings. So stress is really important. We have a whole webinar on stress, dedicated to stress, because it's such an important subject. I think that's coming up in a couple of weeks. So have a think about all of those things. And then foods that can help. Obviously, this is my key area because I work in the world of nutrition predominantly. So we've gone into this in quite a lot of detail. Follow the core meal plan. Eat a low sugar, low carbohydrate, low glycemic type of eating. Hydration is really important. Being properly hydrated can really help in terms of managing cravings. Sometimes people will be feeling a sense of hunger when actually it's their thirst that is the problem, but perhaps they've lost that thirst. What's the word that I'm looking for? You've lost your sensation of feeling thirsty. So you'll read that signal as hunger when in fact it might be thirst. So just check in with yourself as to whether you're drinking enough water, because that's absolutely key. Add lemon to water. We know that some of the polyphenols in lemon have been shown to, in some very small research studies, have been shown to improve insulin sensitivity and can help to reduce cravings. Apple cider vinegar, again, very small research studies, but some interesting correlation between having some very diluted apple cider vinegar in water. One study found that it could help to promote insulin sensitivity, which is one of the things we really want to be working in terms of this leptin as well. So those are things that you can think about. If you're going to start with apple cider vinegar, you want to be thinking about just having something like 1 teaspoon in 200 mils of water to begin with, making sure that you're not having any acid reflux as a result of having that. And if you're fine, you can gradually increase over the next few days to 3, 4, or 5 teaspoons in a glass of water. But again, it's very individual. Some people will do really well with that. Other people will see no benefit. And we're often asked about apple cider vinegar gummies. I believe they have similar properties. I haven't tried those personally, and I don't know many people who have, so I can't comment from a practical point of view. So, Alison, last thoughts from you, I think.
Yes, so think so this is all about taking control of your cravings, and a little bit we've touched on a little bit of this already. Because some of it probably is to do with willpower, as well as some of these other strategies that you can see on this slide. So check in with yourself, just going through these points. Are you physically hungry, or are you feeding your mood? So really think about that. Really think when you go to reach for something like the packet of biscuits, which I can relate to and why I keep referring to it. Actually, am I really peckish? Do I really need a biscuit, or am I just feeling a bit bored? I don't know about everyone else, but I do like a biscuit to dip in my tea. I'm not quite sure why. It's a comfort thing. So again, something that maybe other people experience. And it's about understanding why we are um, wanting to eat those treats and those sweets and those foods that aren't quite so good for us. So thinking about your mood is quite important in regards to that, and being able to manage your cravings and stopping yourself from actually going ahead and eating something. Recognizing your patterns of behavior. And I don't know if anyone came to our habits webinar a few weeks ago, but um, having cravings, um, it can be habitual if they're at certain times of the day, um, or there's certain points in your day that you feel that you can't manage unless you have your donut or your biscuit or your packet of crisps. So it's about being aware of that and breaking those patterns of behaviour can be helpful. Be organised with your healthy options as well. So thinking about your shopping list. Before I'm going to go back to the supermarket, I'm so sorry, before we do our grocery shopping, and avoiding foods that we know aren't quite so good for us. So if we have some kind of plan, and we think about the need for sweet things, and you might really go for sweet things every time. Um, then thinking about how you can um, replace those sweet things with something a lot more healthy that has the natural sugar in it. And I was just thinking about that lovely picture of the raspberries on slide number 9. Visualization. I find this quite interesting, actually, and this is about the ability to distract the brain, and maybe replace it with some kind of mental image um, of the craved item, replace that with a different, more positive image. And I don't know if anyone here in our webinar today has a food that they can or they like, or they can honestly say they like to grab just as much as the biscuits and the crisps and the cookie dough ice cream in the freezer. But if there is a food like that, maybe a cut up avocado or the raspberries, like we mentioned before, or something similar, then think about that, create that imagery in your mind and try and shift all the bad things out of it. And apparently that's been researched to have a positive impact on craving activity. Thinking about also distraction, positive reinforcement, and the sensory details. So again, going back to that imagery and thinking about an alternative that you might fancy and trying to replace that. So how to once you've identified the craving, choose a replacement image, engage your senses, and then practice regularity. And that all comes down to mindfulness as well, and mindfulness strategies. Just what I've been talking about previously to help you combat that craving and prevent yourself from reaching into the cupboard. But do you know what? If the sweets and the treats aren't in the cupboard, there's nothing to reach for.
Yeah, I think that is probably. And the other thing I think that I really regularly recommend people to do is if you're living with other people and you have the sweets and the treats there for them for whatever reason that they want them or you want them to have them or you want that availability, move them periodically, put them somewhere different. Because when you're in that moment of going and grabbing that less healthy snack, if you have to make a little bit more effort, you have the break in the cycle, which can just give you that minute to think, actually, do I really want this? Or would I rather have something like an apple or a glass of water or a glass of something else, cup of tea, something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The trouble is, I feel that, and yeah, maybe some
Gone.
people agree with me. Sometimes I wonder if, do you know, an apple just won't cut it.
No, it won't, but an apple with almond butter might. So,
Yes.
and actually, cravings don't last. I don't know if we've actually said that today, but I think they think a craving will generally go after 10 minutes or so. So, if you can just weather that peak of need and just distract yourself or do your visualization strategy through that peak, you can go past it. It might come back,
Yeah.
but you can go past it. So,
And even having a drink and drinking like a glass of water, that can really curb. I know it's a very immediate and very quick feeling, but that can curb hunger, can't it? And maybe cause a distraction to stop you craving something, possibly.
yeah, no, definitely. So just to let you know, we've got a couple of more webinars coming up. Next week, we're going to be looking at weight loss tips for perimenopause and menopause. And it's myself and our menopause lead, Rupa, who will be running that webinar. And then, yes, we are running the stress webinar on the 10th of March. So do come along and book in for those. Adna, if you could share the links, that would be great. Thank you. And just quickly, I've shared a poll because one of the things we were talking about in the weight loss team the other day is that we have a huge number of bank holidays coming up across August, April and May. And so we generally don't run a webinar on a bank holiday because if we are working, we're normally very, very busy because the team is slightly smaller that day across the whole of the Boots Online team. So we were discussing whether people would be interested in coming on the Tuesday. So I thought that it would be a great opportunity to ask you. So for those weeks when there's a bank holiday on the Monday, we're thinking we'll run a session on the Tuesday lunchtime. And I can see around 70% of you think that's something you would come to. So thank you. We'll definitely give that a go and see how we get on better than because otherwise I think we'll be missing a really large number of weeks because we've got Easter weekend with a bank holiday and then we've got both bank holidays in May. So thank you for answering that. That's really helpful. And we're going to come to your questions now. So thanks for sticking with us. Let's see what we've got here. Alison, shall I shout at you? Not shout, literally. There's some questions in the chat box. So, and there's some in the Q&A box. I know somebody had written one in the chat box about dates and whether they were as unhealthy as some of the sort of more sugar-rich treats. Do you want me to jump in or do you want to take that one, Alison?
Say they're not, but I'm quite happy to be corrected.
Yeah, no, I really like a good date. So medjool dates are my preferred dates because they're lower in sugar, but they are more expensive, of course. And I would say, again, one of the things I often do with a date, or one of the things I recommend people do with a date, is to actually fill the middle with maybe a nut or some nut butter. And maybe you only need one or two of those, really savor it. You don't need to be eating more than that, really, as a snack. And generally, my recommendation is that we snack as little as possible. It just needs to be something we get our head,
Even even fruits.
even fruit. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think time we eat, I think if you're, it depends. So somebody like yourself, Alison, who probably you're at a point now where irrespective of your past, you probably are in a weight loss maintenance phase. So, an occasional treat for you once a day, maybe even twice a day, if you're finding that that keeps you stable and your weight is stable, that's fine. If you're someone who wants to be focusing on weight loss, the less often you eat in terms of those treats or the snacks, the more insulin sensitivity you're going to get, the more leptin sensitivity you're going to get. So it's really important to eat less often, but to get those 2 or 3 meals in every day, making sure you've nailed your protein with each of those. Even if you have fruit, I would say have it at the end of a meal. It's a great food to eat, but just tuck it on with your meal as a sort of like that.
Yeah. And that's better for your teeth too, of course.
Of course. Yeah, great.
And just because you've mentioned that and someone has mentioned it in the chat about eating regular meals, 3 meals a day. Mm.
Honestly, the more I look at this, the more I know there's not one size that fits everyone. We are slightly individual and slightly unique. However, generally speaking, if you're trying to lose weight and you want to create insulin sensitivity, the best place to start is by having a sort of 12-hour overnight fast and then having three eating occasions during your eating window the next day. So, sort of 7 a.m. till 7 p.m. or something like that, 8 till 8. And trying to leave a little bit of time before you go to bed in the evening, and really making sure that you're making a plate a little bit like our core eating plan, where you've got the complement of different foods, you've got that healthy fat, you've got the protein, and you're really, really filling up on the fiber-rich vegetables to really give you that satiety as well. And it that can take a while just to even nail that across your three meals. So it might be that you're doing that very well with one meal. So try and build it into two meals and then three meals. It can make a huge difference. Yeah. So somebody's asking about symptoms of leptin resistance in the Q&A box. And so we don't tend to say your names, and I can see you're anonymous anyway. So they're very similar in terms of the symptoms that we would expect to see when you are insulin resistant. So you would notice more cravings, you'd notice your energy is not great. You might have difficulty losing weight. You might notice that you're really hungry, or you're having, dips in your energy, you're having fatigue, your metabolism can be reduced. It could be that you're having a lot of pain generally, or you might have a lot of joint pain. We know that insulin resistance, leptin resistance can create additional inflammation in your body. So you would want to be thinking about all of those aspects as well. And also then in terms of, your GP may be able to see some things that are out of reference range in your blood tests if you have some blood tests. So you just generally are going to be struggling, I would say. So if that feels like you and this is really a hard journey for you, then that might be something that's really relevant to you. I don't think there are any tests where we can look at leptin resistance particularly easily. One of the things we can look at with insulin resistance is your waist circumference, and that could be a helpful sort of clue, but also that sort of energy. If you're waking up in the morning, you're feeling tired, all of those things, if you're really dipping in terms of your energy, it could be insulin resistance or leptin resistance. It's a really horrible cycle to be in, but you can 100% get out of it. So I hope that this webinar will help with that.
Mm.
Yeah. So a question here about Minjare, and there was one I think in the chat box. For the sake of everyone here, we can't make medication recommendations. That's not the purpose of this webinar. If you want to consider having a medication, then we would recommend you speak to a team of medical providers such as your GP or the Boots Online Doctor team. This is really not what this webinar is for. It's for anyone, whether you're on a weight loss medication or not. Having said that, we do have lots of questions as well around Minjare today. So, and Wegovy.
Do. Yeah. What about this one? Any literature recommendations for reading up on leptin, insulin, and cortisol and all those considerations? Is there anything out there for the...
Yes, I really like this guy. There's a couple of people. So Jason Fung, I do recommend his books quite regularly. He is somebody who specializes, I think, in kidney medicine, but has become very fascinated by fasting, weight management, insulin sensitivity. So his surname is Fung. Jason is his first name. I think he's Canadian. I really like the way he writes, and actually, you can listen to some of his um, podcasts and webinars on YouTube. So that's, somewhere that you can access that information. And then if you like his style and like what he's saying, or it makes sense to you, then you can jump in and have a look. He does produce a lot of books. Yeah, so he's great. There are lots of people. So, yeah, difficult to say.
Yeah, I was looking at the Food Standards Agency as well because with
Mhm.
children we use the Eat Well guide a lot. Um, but there are a few bits and bobs on their website as well, aimed at the consumer more
Yeah,
so than the professional. Yeah.
yeah, that's true. That's a nice resource. And Diabetes UK as well has got some good resources as well. So yeah. Um, some people are talking about weight loss medications. Let's see what else we can find that isn't weight loss medication orientated. It's about that sort of cravings late at night. Somebody is saying they're having cravings late at night, generally for cheese or nuts. How do I make that sense of fullness last? That's really interesting. This could be a habit. So, it could be that you're just mentally prepared to have that craving. And we talk about that a lot in the psychology webinar. It may be that you are physically hungry, in which case, just go through each of your three meals and just make sure you're nailing those high fiber foods and your protein and making sure you're getting those healthy fats. Gradually, as things begin to settle down and you get some leptin sensitivity and insulin sensitivity, you will notice that those cravings are gone in the evening. Genuinely, that will really happen or can really happen. Make sure you're really well hydrated as well. So you want your urine to be nice, pale coloured urine, because that's really important. And thank you. Sorry, having to go, Patsy. It's been great to have you here today, and do sign up for more webinars if it's of help to you. Yeah, great. Somebody's got some long-term health problems. We are writing a list of more webinars and podcasts to write and create. So for people with long-term health conditions, we are going to try and do something specifically for you. Um, somebody's
What about protein powders?
Yeah, I mean, they can be helpful. Um, they can be helpful to get you to that protein level. The research tells us that actually they don't create insulin sensitivity in the same way as food. They will have a beneficial effect. So it might be that they're a good supplement, but they're not a good alternative. Do you see what the difference is there? So they might
Yeah.
you for maybe if you're somebody who needs to have 80 grams, say, and you're managing that 60, if you can get the extra 20 in from a protein powder, great. Don't do the whole story from the protein powder. It isn't going to give you the same beneficial effect. Yeah. Somebody with long-term health problems such as fibromyalgia, osteoarthritis, you want to be thinking, I need to be eating in a way where I reduce my stress, where I reduce the stress on my body. So you also said you have a lot of stress. So I would say look at an anti-inflammatory approach. On the website, we have the Mediterranean style of eating. Adna, if you're able to share the link for that, I would direct you straight towards that because we want to be bringing down inflammation as much as possible. So you want to be really boosting up your healthy fats as much as you can. So have a look at that and try and bring some of those healthy fats in. Again, take time out to eat as well, really important.
Oh. Sorry, off the back of that, Ruth, funnily enough, I just wanted to say something about this question here about a physiological reason why cravings occur at a particular time of day. But I'm wondering if um, maybe shifting meal times would help with that. Um, and also thinking about what foods are being eaten during those meal times, and also habit again. If someone has a craving at between 3 and 4 every single day, it sounds to me as there might be a little mix of things going on there.
I think nail your breakfast. Funny enough, that's really important for that afternoon craving is making sure breakfast is really protein rich. That can really make a difference. I think you're right, habit might be part of it. Also, our natural diurnal rhythm is that we have a dip in our energy and in our cortisol generally around that time and the same time in the middle of the night. So sometimes people will wake up in the middle of the night around that 3 a.m., find it really difficult to get back to sleep, might then feel hungry. It is just our natural rhythm. That's how we're meant to be. So really work on your sleep, work on your stress, and work on those really supportive meals. And if you need a snack,
Yeah, the right foods.
I'm gonna be there. Yeah. Yeah, I was looking, somebody's asking about the protein foods that are in the supermarket. I was looking at one of the protein-rich yogurt type puddings the other day just to evaluate. And the one I looked at was from one of the sort of less expensive supermarkets. Talking of supermarkets again, Alison. And actually, I didn't dislike the product. I thought it was reasonable. The one I particularly looked at, it was made by Arla, the brand. I have no royalties. And it didn't really have any unhealthy fillers, which I thought was really positive. And it gave 20 grams of protein, and it seemed to be, yeah, not an awful option. So those some of those can be good. Again, be careful, have a look at the ingredients lists and see. There are some which are way healthier than other options. Unfortunately, not all things are equal. Yeah. People are asking about fasting in the week. We do a whole webinar on how to
Mm.
eat. So do have a look at that. We can share the links for the previous webinars. Yeah. Somebody's struggling with choosing the right yogurt. I don't like really thick ones, such as skyr. Didn't do it for me. What do you suggest? Fat-free, sugar-free, Greek, natural. I like and suggest Greek yogurt as a good protein-rich option. So have a look and see if there's one that you like. Yeah, maybe mixing
And the
your.
plant-based yogurts as well.
Some of those are really high in sugar, so I don't know if you've had a look at the labels on those, Alison, and if there's any that you like.
No, I mean I do eat Alpro yogurt, but to be fair, I haven't looked at the sugar content, so I might have to do that when I get home.
Yes, please. I know I looked at a coconut one, which was really delicious, I have to say, and I was quite surprised at how much sugar there was in there. It was quite upsetting. Yeah, but I was going to
Um,
say, mix up your Greek yogurt or your yogurt with some berries and then put in a few nuts. You can boost up the protein content in different ways. So, some seeds, some nuts, some berries. Obviously, the berries won't have very much protein in, but we'll add an element of yumminess and our low glycemic, low sugar as well. Brings sweetness in naturally. You could add a little bit of cinnamon to that, which can anecdotally help to reduce blood sugar or just manage blood sugar a little bit and brings natural sweetness, or even some vanilla essence. So if you've got a real sweet tooth, you can really help yourself. Um, Somebody's asked about Ramadan and how to manage that. That is a really tough time. If you're a Boots Online Doctor customer, do feel free to write in and we can send you some written advice about how to manage Ramadan, because it is a challenging time. Yeah,
yeah, it's tough. We do get questions on Ramadan quite frequently.
yeah.
So you're not the only one. You're not alone.
Yeah, I sort of just think you need to fast, don't you? So you need to be thinking about really nailing your protein-rich meals around your fasting windows, and getting that protein really in there as much as you can, and then just having, believe you're allowed to have water during the fasting period. So yeah, it is. We know it's quite a hard time, and if you're taking a medication of any description, really consider whether you need to take a break. Um, you don't have to, but just see how you go, because we want you to not feel unwell in that time as well. Would you agree, Alison?
Yeah, no, absolutely. But yeah, it is a tricky time, for many different reasons. But yeah,
Yes. Great. Somebody's asking about having a meal replacement, freezing portions, but no, I'll be craving treats like mad. Distraction sounds like a really important point for you at that point. Distraction all the way. I've just been recovering from a broken ankle, and actually, what you'll find as well is that you won't be able to reach the treats. So if they're not near you, you're not going to be able to hobble. I haven't been able to go anywhere for a treat because haven't been able to get to my kitchen. I've been reliant on people bringing me food. Very handy for being really focused and healthy, I have to say. It's been a top bonus. Yeah, good. I'm glad you're laughing with me. I was laughing at myself. But it's a really helpful thing to, you know, there are bonuses that will come from that. So hopefully that can really help. Um, really good to see everyone. I think we're nearly at time, aren't we? So any last questions, Alison?
From me or from everyone else?
No, from everyone else.
From everyone else. I did think so. Um,
Good to see you all. And we are back next week, going to be looking
yeah.
at menopause, perimenopause, and the week after, we're going to be looking at stress. And thank you.
Oh,
Send
yeah.
day.
So, yeah, that person who asked the question about the marina coil, please do come back to our next session.
Yeah, brilliant. Yes, we can pick up on that question
Yeah.
next week. Great. All right. Have good weeks. Look after yourselves. Don't overthink it. Take note of what's going on for you. Start tuning into your cravings, figuring out what's triggering them. Because if you can figure that out and you can get on top of the triggers, it can make a big difference. Thanks, Alison. Thanks, Adna. And have a great week, everyone.
You're very welcome. Bye bye, everybody.
Bye.